Hi everyone, welcome back. We are now going to start rigging up the character. I've learned pretty much everything I needed from YouTube and kind of made a compilation of everything for this specific character. A huge shout out to George Bernier 5D. His videos helped immensely, and especially the ARM tutorial. So I'll link his videos down in the description, but I will be only summarizing the inverse kinematics part. He does both forward and inverse kinematics. So here we go. Okay, so this is where we left off last time. For the added armature, we do Shift A and armature. Now I'm going to be using B bones because you can add segmentations and also it just looks cleaner. So from here we do B bones in front axes. So I want to show the axes and I want to be able to see the bones through the mesh and hence in front. So let's rotate this a little bit just to match it with the mesh a bit better. So I'm going to call this bone here the pelvis. Let's go into edit mode and I'm going to extrude this upward here, and I'm going to call this bone the lower back. Extrude it one more time to about where the clavicle is. This is the upper back. And then extrude it one more time to the X around here. So this is what I'm going to call the clavicle.L. So Blender has an automated inbuilt function where it just automatically, everything that's named .L, it will mirror and call .R when we symmetrize. Now I'm going to call this bone here the upper arm IK.L. IK for inverse kinematics, because inverse kinematics means that if we rig it up properly, if we move one bone, it will affect the rest of the bones and give us, and so we don't have to move all the bones, which is forward kinematics. This is lower arm IK.L. Then this one is extrude one more time. This is the hand IK.L. Let's go from the top view. Let's actually go into wireframe mode. It's much easier to grab them in wireframe mode. Okay, cool. So because these are IK bones, we don't actually want them to deform because we just want to see where they move to. So I'm going to uncheck the deform button. I'm also going to highlight these three bones and let's see, Control N, Y-axis. This now and this one as well. So this has flipped the x-axis from pointing down to up so that it will solve some issues later. Anyway, because the hand IK bone is the bone that we want to move to move the rest, I'm going to get rid of its parent. Because the parent, if the parent moves, it will move, and if it has a parent, we can't move it individually. So let's go to relations and get rid of the parent. I'm going to go into wireframe mode and take these three bones. And then I'm going to do Shift D to duplicate, and then Control Alt S to scale them in to make them smaller. Okay, and then I'm going to name these bones. These are now the deformer bones. So I'm going to call them upper arm deform.L. This one here is called the lower arm deform.L. And then finally, this one is the hand deform.L. I'm so sorry, my computer is very slow. Anyway, so these, however, we want them to deform the mesh, so I'm going to click them and then check the deform box. This one as well. And this one deforms. And finally, I want this one to also deform. Great, now I'm going to take the deformation bones and subdivide them so that we can have better control of the deformation of the actual upper arm and lower arm. So right click to subdivide. I'm going to take this thing here to extrude it out into the Y direction. Wrong way. So these are going to be the controllers for the deformation. This one here, extrude in the Y direction. These deformation, these are controllers. I'm going to also get rid of the deform box. and also clear their parents, because later on we'll give them new parents. This parent, this parent. Cool. So now I'm going to take this and parent it to the IK bone, because we want to move it when the IK bone moves. Oh, not connected, sorry. Control P, keep offset. Take this and also parent it to the IK bone, Control P. And this, parent it to this, Control P, keep offset. Okay, I'm also going to make an elbow target, so I'm going to take this here, extrude it that way. And what this does is basically, if this is the bone that's going to control the rotation of my elbow. So let's just want this bone, nothing else. Grab. Let's move it away. Cool, so that's pretty much all the bones that we need. So let's go into pose mode and start doing some inverse kinematics. So what we're going to do is take the hand IK and the forearm IK, Control Shift C, inverse kinematics, or Shift I for inverse kinematics shortcut. But anyway, you can all find it in this panel here. This dotted line goes from the hand to the pelvis, but we want this to end where the kind of the arm starts. So the chain length, let's do it to 2. So now you see points there. The pull target is pretty much the controller, the elbow target bone. Oh, I might not have named these bones actually. Let's give them names. So for this one, we'll call this the elbow target .L. And this one here, we're going to call the upper arm control.L. This is the elbow control.L. And this one here is the lower arm control.L. Cool, so now that we have inverse kinematic set up, let's go back to here and actually pick the elbow target. It's really important to name all your bones. And you can see suddenly there's a big shift. So what we need to do is change the pull angle. And it's usually a multiple of 90. So let's see if that worked. Okay, so if I turn off and on the IK, nothing changed. So this would have worked. Now, if I take this bone here and grab it, as you can see, we have some OK motion. Another thing I want to do is that because the hand, we want to make sure that the hand, when the hand deformer stretches, we don't want the hand itself to stretch. So if this thing, because this deformer bone is connected to the hand, we want this to stay as it is. So what we're going to do is take the hand IK controller, shift click this one. So again, click this, shift click this, Control Shift C. I'm going to copy its scale, and we're going to copy its rotation. So whenever we rotate the hand IK, the deformer moves with it and also scales with it. One last thing I want to do is for the deformation bones, I want to add some segmentations. This is one good thing about B bones, is that if you go into the bone and bendy bones, we can do segments. Let's just change it to like, I don't know, 5. This just gives it more of a cartoonish look so that you can actually get a more smooth rotation. I mean, you don't really have to do this, but I might as well just to show you for completeness sake. Take this here. Okay, and the last thing we want to do is make sure that I'm going to hide these IK bones. So for these deformation controllers, we want to take this and stretch it to this bone. So every time we move this deformation bone, this will correspondingly move and therefore move the mesh. So Control Shift C, and we're going to do stretch to. And similarly this to this. Control Shift C, stretch to, take this, and this, and this, Shift C, stretch to. And finally the hand IK, because that's the one we're moving, we'll want that to be stretching to the deformation of the forearm. So when we move the hand IK, the big bone here, it will then cause this to move and hence the arm to move. Okay, so that's pretty much all that I wanted to do for the hand. So now we can actually just try to merge the mesh with the armature, and Blender has an automated way of doing that, which is really nice, but it's not correct all the time, so we do have to go back later on and fix some weight paints. So take the mesh, which is the child, shift click the armature, the parent, Control P with automatic weights. And this is gonna take a while. Oh, please don't crash. Please don't die. ASMR. Oh, okay, it's done. Okay, so now let's go to pose mode and take the hand IK controller, which is our controller bone, and move it around. Ooh, okay, something is wrong. So A Alt GRS. So right now I think the deformation bone doesn't seem to be moving. So let's go to the edit mode and see what's wrong. So Z4. So let's see, does this actually have a parent? Yes, it doesn't have a parent. It needs to be parented by this bone. Okay, we're gonna hide the IK controller and this forearm IK, because the deformation bone for the hand needs to be connected to the segments of the deformation of the forearm. So Control P, keep offset. Okay, now it should be working, so then I'm going to do Alt H to unhide everything. C6. Okay, and then going into pose mode. Grab it. Okay, now it seems to be working. So as you can see, a lot of things are moving. It's not just the arm. For example, the belt, if you can look down here. And that's okay, because that's just Blender's issue with the automated Blender, assignment of the bone. So we can fix that later, but I'll do it in a future video. And so if you take this bone here, you should be able to see that the whole elbow is rotating. And also the belt moves as well, but another weight issue. Okay, so at least the arm looks okay. The last thing I want to say is that for the arm, because we have these segments, right? We can use the ease in and ease out functionality of the segments, so that, because our wrist doesn't really move that crazily. So what I'm going to do is go into wireframe, click this deformation bone here. If we look at the segmentation, we can say the ease out and set it to 1. This just means that if I were to take, for example, the hand IK and rotate it in the Z direction, you can see that this part is still rigid. Right, so the wrist itself isn't really moving that much. Similarly, if I take this part here and get the ease in to be 1, then the shoulder part is more rigid. So that's more realistic. And for example, this looks wacky now, but if I rotate it, yeah, that's gonna help it a lot. And of course, it's fairly slow. Anyway, so Alt GRS. So this is pretty much all I needed to do, or wanted to do for the arm. And so later on, we'll animate it. Anyway, let's go to edit mode and continue with the foot and the leg. So we'll go back to edit mode. We can go find the pelvic bone and extrude it down. So I'm going to click this bone here. Oh, let's deselect the mesh for now, because I don't want it to do anything. Let's also unparent the mesh to the armature, and we can reparent it after I finish the leg and symmetrized everything. So I take the mesh, the child, and take this, do Alt P, clear parent. Okay, and then if I click just the armature, edit it. In edit mode, I should have taken just the bottom of this bone. Just this part. And I'm gonna extrude it in the Z direction. Take this and move it about here. This is gonna be the femur, the left femur. And by left, of course, I mean her left, not our left. I do know my directions. Oh my gosh. Stop lagging. Ah. Okay, grab it and move it here. And let's just name it as we go along. So if we go to the bone, go to the top, we'll call this femur.l. And let's look on the side view. That looks pretty okay. And so let's extrude it one more time. Grab it and move it to about where the leg starts. And from the side view, this is good. And we're going to call this, is this called the tibia? What is it called? Tibia or fibula? I don't know. I'm not very good with biology. Okay, let's just call it tibia. I think that's what the lower leg is called. Okay, and then I'm gonna extrude this twice more. So once for the foot, extrude to about here, and once more for the toes. So I'm gonna call this here the foot .l, and this thing here is gonna be called toes.l. Great. So because we want a controller for the foot, just like we have a hand IK, we want a foot IK. I'm going to take this bone here, I'm going to shift duplicate it, Control Alt S, and scale it up to make it fatter a bit. And because it's an IK bone, we want to make sure it doesn't deform the mesh. Uncheck this, and also get rid of the parent because it's the IK bone. So we can then go into pose mode, and this Control Shift click. Shift click this bone, just like the hand. You've got the hand IK for and Control Shift the forearm. This is foot IK, Control Shift the tibia, and then Shift I think that's, yeah, automatic inverse kinematics. We don't even have to go to the panel. So the pole target. Ooh, I forgot to create the knee, haven't I? So if I go back into edit mode, I take this bone here, and I'm going to extrude it in the Y direction. This is knee. This is the knee target, and is exactly the same. It acts exactly the same as the elbow target, controlling the rotation of the leg. So I'm gonna call this up here the knee target .l, and I'm gonna make sure it doesn't deform the mesh, and it has no parent. Okay, and then I'm just gonna grab it. Oh, sorry, not grabbing the other bones, just this bone. And grab it in the Y direction, move it out here, far away so Blender doesn't assign it to anything. Anyway, so we take this, so we go back to pose mode, and we look at this, which is where the IK thing is. Chain length is 2 because we want this to connect it to the femur, not the pelvis. And the pole target here is going to be, of course, the knee target. Knee target. Oh, did I call it connect target? Oh, can't type. Okay, so you got weird rotation again, so let's try a multiple of 90. Okay, so that seemed to have worked, so 90 was fine for that. Okay, so then if you look at this, and I move it. See, now it's we got inverse kinematics going. Cool. So, and of course the body isn't moving because we've cleared the parent and we haven't actually joined the mesh to the armature. So what I'm gonna do next is that I want her to be able to tiptoe. So in order to do that, we need to add in a pivot point. So from the side view, I'm gonna go into edit mode and add a new bone. Okay, this bone here, this little thing here, extrude in the Z direction, and I'm gonna, so this is gonna be the toe pivot. So I'm gonna go into bone and name it the toe pivot. Toe pivot.l. I can't seem to type. Cool. And I'm gonna clear its parent and don't want it to deform. Okay, so now I'm gonna do kind of a weird thing in which I'm gonna parent this hand IK bone because I want to change which bone I want to be the controller because I'm adding this pivot. So I'm gonna take this toe bone, Control Shift the toe, Control P, make that its parent, keep offset. And then I'm gonna take this bone here, Control the foot IK, and Control P, parent it to the toe bone, keep offset. And for the toes, I am going to clear its parent. So the toe has now essentially become our new inverse kinematic IK controller because it has no parent. And so let's just see what happens to this. First of all, let's go into object mode. And because now I want to symmetrize the mesh so I get the right side of the body as well. And to do that, we need to first Control A and reset all transformations. So rotations, locations, and scale, reset it. Then we go into edit mode and highlight pretty much the right side of this body, all the bones in it, that one too. Right click and symmetrize. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to go into object mode and reparent this mesh, Control P, automatic bits. Now this might take quite a while again, so cue elevator music. Oh, if only you can hear the humming my computer's making right now. Ah, yes, it's done. Okay. Cool, so moment of truth, let's see what it looks like. So we know the hand is fine, hopefully. If I just grab this and move it. Okay, it's basically the same thing as before. Ooh. And let's take the foot. So remember, we have made the toe to be pretty much our new controller. Let's take the toe because that one has no parent. Okay, it's working. Okay, looking pretty alright. Alright, and then what I'm going to do is take this here and rotate it. Okay, as you can see, it's not exactly pivoting because this thing is moving out of this bigger bone. So what I'm gonna do, let's see if this works, is take this big bone, shift click the inside deformer, Control Shift C. I'm gonna copy, I don't know, let's copy the rotation, Control C. Can we also copy the scale? And maybe let's try also copy location. Okay, if I take this bone here now and rotate it, so hopefully this inside and outside bone will stay together. Okay, cool. You can see now we're getting rotation of the foot. She's basically on her tiptoes. And we can even go the other way around, in which she's balancing on her toes, but now because the toe isn't parented to anything, you need to grab this and move it. But I mean, if you want to animate her, it's quite easy to just shift things. This is just to make your life easier. But I'm never really going to want her to balance on her toes anyway, but she can still do this, which is quite nice. Okay, so that's pretty much it, I think. Oh, of course, because I've done this on the left hand side, I need to do it on the right hand side as well. Yeah, I grabbed the toe pivot instead. Take this, and the inside bone is what we want. Shift click, Control Shift C, all transformations. Great. So now we have pretty much rigged up the foot as well as the arm of the character, And in the next video I'm gonna do eye tracking as well as facial movements and fingers and toes. And I think I also need to make sure that the hair is attached to the figure, and then we need to do some weight painting because Blender's automatically generated weight to bone, bone to mesh weight paint isn't usually optimal, so we need to fix that manually. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.